Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Show to V with Mike G, the show of life, the show of early Houston music scene. That's right, I'm looking at you. Hands up. Houston, design, gin, and traveling the world, sipping fine cocktails. Today's guest is the amazing Claire Sprouse. We had the opportunity to chat during Bar Institute in Austin, Texas, sometime this summer. And shortly thereafter, Claire is being recognized for sustainability by Tales of the Cocktail and traveling even more to pursue fine drinks and fine human interactions. So I hope you guys enjoyed this chat with Claire Sprouse.
And then Walters. And then next door to Walters, across the street from Mary Jane's, was Silky's.
Silky's, what was that?
It was just this tiny dive bar that Pam owned. Mary Jane's, Walters, Silky's, and I saw like some crazy bands there.
Really?
And there was a place out on, the International Ballroom. I saw some bands. I saw Fugazi there when I was in high school.
What year are you talking?
Like 2000?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just went to any show. It didn't matter what it was because I was like, I'm sure it's good.
It's got to be good, right? Like, these venues are really good. All right, so I've got to mourn a little bit. Do you miss Fugazi? Miss them touring? I miss them a lot, actually.
I think it's weird. I never go to shows.
Not now?
No.
Why is that?
I don't know. Well, you know what? I never got into downloading music. Mm-hmm. Like, it was just beyond my comprehension. Like, after Napster went down, I was like, BitTorrents. I still don't even know what a BitTorrent is.
I don't think anybody knows how they work. They're just like this thing. What about Spotify? Do you use that?
I just got Spotify.
Yeah.
I use Pandora, which is kind of dangerous. Pandora's kind of a fickle bitch.
Yeah,
but
it is. And you get, like, great songs with shitty songs.
Yeah, well, everything loops back to that one song about the school shooting. It's got, like, the...
Which song?
That sounds like a poppy dance song, but it's really about a school shooting.
Oh shit! I don't remember.
Like
what
all
song
the do.
Is it older or newer?
No, you would know the song.
Okay.
If I played it, I can't remember what it's called.
Maybe I didn't realize it was about a school.
Nobody does because it's like everybody's dancing. I'm like, this is terrible. So Pandora loops everything back to that song.
That's somehow that's
back
the center
to
of
David Bowie for some reason, which is fine.
Yeah.
But so I stopped. I guess when I started bartending is unfortunately when I probably stopped like reading Pitchfork and
it went downhill though.
Spending a lot of time at record stores, and also when I moved to San Francisco and lived in Houston, I would go to
Soundwaves, right?
I'd go to Soundwaves, and that went down after Bucky left.
Oh, really?
And well, they got rid of like they downsized their vinyl to like 3 shelves. I'm sure it's big again because
it's the only thing growing.
You can go to Urban Outfitters and they have a huge nice vinyl selection
and Fugazi shirts there.
Yeah,
you know that? Oh,
super weird. But yeah, I guess when I moved to San Francisco, I also stopped going to record stores as much.
Really? It would, because Amoeba's in San Francisco, right? Isn't that
it is
the Mecca?
It's in like my least favorite neighborhood in San Francisco. Okay. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like my boyfriend Chad and my business partner, he's really great because he remembers everything.
Yeah.
And
wait, isn't that bad when you're with someone like that though? Like, no, actually, what you said. I remember
like situational things. Okay. He doesn't or have any concept of short-term memory, but he'll like he got his master's in art, and then he knows like more than anybody I know. He knows the most about American whiskey, and
right.
He just knows a lot and he remembers everything. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I have a small shelf space for information. So I went to school for art history. And then, when I was into music, I was really into music. And I still know what I like. I feel like I've been listening to the same 10 records for like the last 10 years. But
give me a couple, because I love talking about music. What are a couple of those records?
I got really, really into power pop when I was younger. So
like who?
I like.
'Cause I'm trying to get a good sense of
like,
what you mean.
I don't know, like the Barracudas and the Undertones.
Really? I'm not even familiar with these things.
Have you heard that song Teenage Kicks?
Maybe. Probably.
Okay, maybe I'll make you. Maybe I'll
just
exercise my music sensibilities to make you a mix CD.
Well, I
don't do my computer. I realized the other day doesn't even have a CD player, or it's like a disc drive on it.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing.
Oh, that's weird. Also, I'll send you a flash drive. I don't know what people do now.
You can so you can build a playlist on Spotify. This is the best thing.
Okay, I'll do that.
And so a couple guys, like, do you know Jonathan Wingo by chance?
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful dude. Our whole chat. So he was in town just pretty recently, and we started talking about music. And all of a sudden, I realized he's wearing a Saddle Creek shirt. And then we started talking about Cursive and Bright Eyes, and then turned into us taking some space at Box Table and chatting for an hour and a half and doing an interview.
Oh, weird.
Which is so rad. So we're musical. We're in a musical relationship. So now he's on the road and he's like, oh, I got this playlist for you. I'm like, okay. And so he'll send it on Spotify.
Oh, cool.
So it's perfect. So,
yeah, I should start doing that. We're actually doing a bar that, have you ever been to Japan?
Yeah.
Okay, so in Tokyo, we went to all these bars that we call record bars. But if you Google record bars, something completely weird pops up. But
can't imagine talking about like Xanax or something.
Yeah,
right?
It's like a club. And but these bars were like super cool, and they just had tons of records, and like some guy playing like Brazilian pop from like the 60s,
Really?
and everybody's drinking highballs and chain smoking and eating
something romantic about that.
Delicious snacks everywhere.
Yeah.
And also, if you Google snacks Japan, something completely different shows up.
That's not those like the machines where you can pay for certain items, right?
No. And so we're doing this bar in San Francisco, and it's very much influenced by that, but without trying to be cheesy or overly hipster, because I feel like if I walked into a bar and I saw a bunch of records and record player, I'd be cool.
Yeah. So as you roll your eyes, right?
Trying to find a balance of that, but it's been nice because it's made me think a lot more about music instead of just like hooking up Pandora and things like that. I feel like people don't take into consideration music in bars as much as they should. They just put on like TGIF, play Pandora station and put it on. And
it all just ends up being Death Cab, right? Like emo exactly. 2000s, right?
God, last year when I was in Houston, when we were opening a place, Chad and I were doing, we would alternate, so we weren't at the same bar at the same time, but we would do a Friday night at Nightingale.
Okay, yeah.
And then one of us would be upstairs at Bad News Bar. And so we each worked one night a week at those bars while we were opening this restaurant, because the opening kept getting pushed back. And at Bad News Bar, they're like really into playing full albums, which I think is cool.
Finish? That's amazing, yeah.
But one of the bartenders there like really loved Death Cab for Cutie, and it'd be like Friday night, we're just so slammed. And he was playing the Postal Service. And I was like, what is like? This is making it worse. And
I'm already busy and like stressed out. Now you're making me sad.
Yeah,
like everybody is sad. It's totally right, because in a way it just subconsciously and consciously influences the way we drink. So we're already getting depressed. That's what fucking alcohol is. And then you put on some Ben Gibbard vocals.
Yeah.
I'm like, my existence really isn't what I thought it was.
No.
This is not as good.
Ryan Fitzgerald, I opened ABV in San Francisco, and I still pick up from time to time there, like 1 or 2 times a month. Mm-hmm. And he DJs like Speed Rack vinyls, and he loves to play music. He loves music, and a lot of his job as MOD, I feel like, is DJ
OD,
like on his phone through Sonos, because he has like all these playlists, all these songs on his phone, and it's amazing because it just follows the tempo of the bar.
It's knowing your customers, right?
And if we're like, it's boring in here, we need to step it up, he'll like put on a song, and then all of a sudden like it's like, okay, now it feels like Friday night.
It lost talent, like when you think about it. Well, so the thing, it's interesting. So I found out that your brother works at Half Step. So you're a Texas girl, Texas family, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So were you born in Humble, like you were saying?
No.
It's Humble, or Humble, whatever.
Humble. We're so humble we don't pronounce the H.
We just forgo the
goes.
H. I like it. I like that a lot.
I actually was born in Eagle Pass, just south of Del Rio on the border.
Oh, shit, okay.
Super border town. And then spent a lot of my childhood in Midland, Odessa, like Friday Night Lights land.
Yeah, yeah.
And then a little bit back down on the border in Laredo, like back when you could, as a 10-year-old, I could walk across the border and grab some tacos and walk back. Wow. And then we moved to Humble when I was in high school.
What took was it your parents' whole families?
We had some relatives there.
Oh, I see.
And I think my mom was working there, my dad.
What kind of industries were they in?
My dad was in broadcasting.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you mentioned
he did minor league baseball play-by-play for a while.
Amazing.
Yeah. And he has a online radio show, I think.
Does he really?
I think so. Or he used to do he started a company that would go to high schools and do play-by-play.
Like a professional level play-by-play?
Yeah. So and cool. Then, people would download it that couldn't be there. And then my mom's a nurse.
Really?
She came over from the Philippines as a nurse, and now she's super nurse. So she's getting her doctorate, and she works for the best companies and does a lot of consulting.
So I've got to ask, did your folks meet in the Philippines, or was your mom already over here?
They met in Texas.
Yeah.
My mom called into the radio station and invited, knew somebody else working there, but also invited my dad to a party.
That's amazing. That's almost Sleepless in Seattle-ish.
It is. It kind of is. They're very sweet.
That's great.
They drove up yesterday from Houston to have dinner with my brother and I.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. But I lived in Humble. I moved into Houston, just 30 minutes south, when I was 17 because I graduated a year early, and then went to University of Houston.
So what were you studying at U of H?
Art history.
Oh, so this...
Well, of several things, and then eventually art history.
Did you finish up in art history?
I did, yeah.
I love art. What, any particular time frame or region that you liked?
Well, I actually doubled in art history and anthropology. So at first it was focusing... Well, weirdly, I started on focusing 17th century Dutch painting, which was a very...
Are we talking Rembrandt, or Rembrandt's later, maybe?
Yeah, he's a little later, but just very concise category. And then I had this amazing design professor, and she would teach classes on the history of design.
Kind of functional design?
Everything. So from art to architecture to industrial, and starting with going all the way back to Art Nouveau and to Italian design to mid-century design, things like that. But what I ended up studying the most was, because I was doing anthropology and archaeology, and the main focus of archaeology in the Gulf is usually old plantation sites.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Why? Just because they're preserved and there's...
Well, because that's the oldest buildings.
I see, okay.
For the most part. Through East Texas and Louisiana, there's... for some reason, my professors were focused on African diaspora. Okay. So the movement of African people through the Caribbean and then through the South because of slavery. So in a weird way, I feel because if you think about the cane spirit industry and how intrinsically tied it is to slavery. Yeah. I feel like I was studying rum,
but not knowing it yet, right?
Yeah, in college, and then I did museum and gallery work for a little bit.
Where in Houston?
In Houston, I did some stuff with Diverse Works and the photography museum, and I was ready to pursue that full time, and I don't know, I kind of got a little burnt out immediately on the whole scene. And
it's hard to get those jobs, if I understand.
Super hard to get those jobs. I was lucky because I had lived in the city since I was 17, and I had been going to shows since I was 14, and so I knew all those artsy Montrose neighborhood people. And
don't Google that either.
No. And so I was a regular at a bar called Big Star in the Heights, and then Brad Moore owned that bar, and he now owns several bars with our friend Ryan Rouse. He owns Grand Prize. They're partners at Bad News. They have the Tiki Bar, all these places.
What's a Tiki Bar called?
Lalo.
Oh, okay.
It's up in the Heights. And Ryan at the time, Bobby had just left a restaurant called Beavers to open Anvil. It's like a fancy barbecue restaurant.
What year are we talking?
2009, I guess.
So let's talk about Houston for a moment, right? Because I worked in Houston, but lived in Katy and graduated there, and then kind of trekked out. Went to HCC for a bit, but Houston wasn't that cool from a culinary
Houston was
perspective
not
at all.
cool. Houston was always like a underdog city, and there was never any influx of people unless there were people coming in for like grad programs, because we actually have like really great grad schools.
Academia is great,
Yeah,
but beyond that, like that was the thing when you talk about the music, that to me that was the only centralizing thread in that whole city.
And that was when we were coming up, that happened. And the whole reason Hands Up Houston formed was because bands would skip Houston and just go to Austin or Dallas or even San Antonio, which is
preposterous.
Yes. And
not now, but like then,
totally. And so I felt like if you stayed in Houston, like I did, you became part of this community that, and all those people that stayed there like really fought to make Houston cool. That's
so great.
Where all the, I had friends making shirts that said "Fuck you, Houston rules," and
do you have one of those shirts still?
Austin Drools buttons passed around at shows, and there was a huge rivalry. Everybody hated Austin.
That's crazy. I didn't even realize this. I must have left.
Yeah.
I must have left because it was like
Austin.
2001, I think, or no, 2000. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we like, so we're in a much better place diplomatically now. Austin loves Houston, and I hope vice versa.
Exactly. And then we all just hate Dallas now.
That's totally right. I hate, I feel bad for like Brian McCullough and Michael Morrison, all those
actually,
dudes.
Dallas is really fun.
It can be fun.
I haven't been in a while, but last time I was there, I was really blown away by how great everybody was.
A lot of progress, honestly, like in terms of what I felt about Houston when I was there in the early 2000s. Like I feel about Dallas now, but it's like on the cusp.
Yeah.
I think probably because there's a similar amount of people like, fuck you, Austin, Dallas, another movement.
Yeah.
But so like being a patron of these bars, I find that there's a lot of very common threads with a lot of people I talk to, and they're rooted in the arts. They're rooted in music specifically. They follow for love. That's another very common theme, right? But did you see food and drink is art? It has the same kind of culmination and balance of color, but in this case, flavor, balance of shapes and things. So as a patron, did you start getting interested in the art that is cocktails or the art that is spirits?
Definitely. I think, right before I kind of dived into that world, it was when I really started like going to restaurants more. Yeah. And, I had like a real job. And
so what was that first? Well, two things. One, did Filipino cuisine is great. Did your mom cook a bit?
No. She was like double time nurse.
Just working all the time.
So I'm
you had to
I'm like a
yourself,
product
right?
of like McDonald's and TV dinner culture, and not good food at all. When she does cook, it's very good, but she just hustled and worked really hard to help put my brother and I through school, and so no cooking at home, none at all.
Interesting. So so basically you're the one that has to bring all of it. You've got to be the one exposed to it and then make your own, because you got no background, no muscle memory to it, no historical.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nostalgia.
I still don't really cook. I got a little bit into it, but it's hard to cook for one. And also when I started working at bars and restaurants, like the last thing I want to do on my 2 nights off a week is make a mess in my kitchen and have to clean it up without a dishwasher. Not a person dishwasher, but like an actual dishwasher.
Okay. I thought you meant like, well, I don't have a bar back at home. I don't have a kitchen back. How am I going to do any of this shit? I'm going to keep it straight. Was it a good, what was that first gig then when you stepped beyond the bar?
I just quit my gallery job. I was looking for something. I was at a Big Star after hours for some reason, and was talking with Ryan, who is bar managing at Beavers, and one of the floor managers there, and asked for a job, and they hired me as a server, and I really had no food serving experience, and started working there. And I think one night Ryan made me an aviation, and I was just so blown away by this cocktail.
It's the Ziggy Stardust of drinks.
Yeah, which strangely I don't really like aviations anymore, but
it's good. It's good when you don't, it's because it's so exotic tasting at first, and then you realize like not exotic in a great way. It just piques your interest.
Yes,
it's kind of like, and I talk about film a lot, but I presume that you love film and art and all of that. But it's like Rothko in a way, or Twombly, right? Like it's fucking nuts. And at first when you see it,
very dynamic.
Totally. So many colors. So there's a newness to it. But then, first one, amazing. Second one, this is great too. Like Burnett Newman. These guys are just like or objective, I guess. And then by the fifth one, like, fuck, man. Like you're just scribbling on this canvas, you know? So it changes, right?
It does. And yeah, I definitely don't drink aviations anymore. Yeah. And for a while, I didn't even like touch maraschino because I was like so burned out from those beginning years where all you want to do is drink aviations and Last Words and all those, and Lafroig projects, all these great cocktails that are just so wacky. And now I'm like, I just want like a cognac and soda highball.
Yeah, like something
very simple.
Yeah. Did you like the people part of it, like being a waitress?
Yeah, I did. I actually, I had worked a little bit in retail, and I think that helped me kind of be able to talk to strangers. And my brother actually, before he worked at Half Step, he had pretty limited restaurant experience. And he called me one day and he's like, hey, can you help me find a job in the bar restaurant world in Austin, because I want to get better at like talking to people. And I was like, this is the sweetest, most thoughtful thing a 19-year-old has ever said. That's amazing. So I got him a job at Half Step.
It's brilliant.
Threw him to the wolves. And
you treated the most like elegant and nice, gentle moment with ferocity.
Exactly. But as a server, I feel like I got to know food a lot better. And then after that aviation, I was hooked, and I begged Ryan to let me start working behind the bar. So I started as a bar back, worked my way up, was fortunate or not fortunate enough to be in that position for a while to kind of really learn, because like one day a bartender didn't show up and they're like, you're a bartender now. And I was like, what?
You're like the VP, you just kind of step in. Yeah.
And then Ryan left to go open Grand Prize with Brad, and they're like, guess what? You're the bar manager. And
were you ready for it at that point?
No, I wasn't ready. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know anything. You think you know a lot when you're,
of course,
when you're starting out. And I won like the Bombay Sapphire competition. Oh, really? It was like my first competition, and won it for Texas. I think it was like regional at that time.
Wow.
And I did pretty well when we went to Vegas. And so I thought I knew a lot, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And so our Scotch selection there was so pitiful. It was like Macallan 12, and then Peat Monster, Sheep Dip, and Pig's Nose. And I only bought those because I really like the names.
Oh, yeah. Well, the artwork's not bad either, right?
And it turns out they're actually some very delicious whiskey, but not a super rounded out selection. Yeah. But it was a lot of me going to Anvil and asking Kevin, Bobby's partner there, where do I order glassware from, or who do I talk to, and trying not to... I guess, right? Yeah, and all those things that you should be trained on, but I never got the chance to because it all happened so abruptly. So I had to learn everything the hard way, which is probably why I kind of baby our bar managers at some of our projects.
But it's interesting. It seems like they knew when you didn't know, right? They knew you were ready, but you're like, I'm not ready. Like, you're ready.
Yeah.
And so that's actually a good testament to
it is
talented you are, I suppose, but maybe humble too. Humble. You're very humble.
Humble, exactly. I think one thing that is my downfall is I'm usually one of the more responsible people in the room.
How is that your downfall?
Well, because people recognize that, and then you get more responsibility.
Oh, I see.
So I'm glad I got the opportunity. It completely changed my life.
Yeah.
I learned everything the hard way, which was
you
also
would never
good.
trade it.
No, absolutely not. But I think what I was really, I ended up in San Francisco. I was really thirsty for, I didn't want to stay in Texas my entire life. I thought might come, I might come back eventually, but I just wanted to work in somewhere else. It, at the time, was a very tight knit culture. It was like the grand prize guys, and then it was the anvil guys, and those were like the only two ways you knew how to do things. Because you either came from those two very small schools, and they more or less came out of each other in the first place.
So somewhat incestuous, much like Austin music is
everywhere, typically. But so I ended up in San Francisco.
Why dart in the wall? I mean, San Francisco's a lovely place.
I picked a handful of cities that I liked and that I thought had a strong culture of like mentorship, like people that were there seemed like a lot was happening and there was a lot of things and people to learn from.
Right. What year are we talking that you went down there?
This was 2011.
Okay.
I think, it'll be my 5-year San Fran anniversary.
San-Fran-versary. Oh, you said that.
In August. And so I sent an email out to a person I knew in San Francisco, somebody in Portland, somebody in New York, and somebody in Miami because I was toying with doing grad school.
I see. Okay. Same field in art history as well, in design.
And the next day, my friend called me and said if I could be in San Francisco in 8 days. I had a job at Rick House.
I've heard of that place.
Yeah, and
did you have like any idea what you were getting into, like stepping into what was like a global stage? I would say.
Not really. I mean, I did sort of at that point. I was really involved with USBG. Bobby and Alba and our friend Mike helped start the USBG chapter in Houston.
Oh wow.
And we had just had our first leadership conference. And so I met all these people, and then I had done that Bombay Sapphire competition and met a lot of people, and I'd been to Tails twice, and my mind was
the
blown.
resume is like building, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I was just so floored by all these things happening. And at the time, the only bars outside of Texas I'd been to a handful in San Francisco, New Orleans, and then a few in New York.
Oh, okay.
And so I felt like I had so much to learn.
Well, so this is an interesting point then too. So you've got what on most pieces of paper would be a fair amount of academic background, right? Like you could get a job probably, and given there's a lot of competition and stuff, but you could get a job, right? You got the degree. You're even thinking about pursuing master's. But there's something beyond maybe the creative piece of it. There's no ceiling to this industry, for one. It is actually very lucrative. Was there a point where like, okay, well, maybe this concept of a career is turning into something in the hospitality realm?
Yeah, I think at that point, I didn't even think about it in that way. I was just like, this is what I'm doing. Like, there was no like, oh, this is something I can take seriously.
Are you an impetuous person?
Build upon for my future. I think about that now.
I see.
But at the time, I was like, I am completely 110% into this.
Yeah.
And I can't do anything else ever again. And
amazing. You fell in love.
Yeah, apparently. I just felt very passionate about it. I had built a really good base of regulars at the bar I was at in Houston, and that really helped. So it wasn't so much about learning how to manage, and it wasn't so much about making good cocktails, but I learned at that place a lot about hospitality and being part of a community, or how the bar and the restaurant can be a part of a community. Yeah. And so that really affected me.
We talk about I mean, again, like it's really not that different than studying the impacts of design and culture and how that affects. I mean, you're entrenched in this community. You're designing drinks, I guess, for lack of a better
exactly.
term, you know?
And there's something about the spirits world, cocktail world, that definitely it helps to have a degree in art history because so much of it is more or less like when I talk about gin, it's more or less a history lesson.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, talk about what was happening in England and Holland and Europe at that time. And
social schisms, I guess, right? We talk about Old Tom being yeah.
And so all of that, when I do those lectures or, train staff, they're just history lessons. So
So you're right back where you started anyway.
Exactly.
It's just a different venue.
Exactly.
Same content, right? Mm-hmm. How was the Rick House experience?
It was great. I was terrified. Yeah. Like I said, I had 8 days to be there. I found a sublet. I sold all my stuff. Mm-hmm. I threw a really big party and
burned the place down. And then I was on my way.
It was bad.
Did you like your landlord at that spot?
I did, but we had a pool, and it was just this little duplex. And I brought down all the bottles I had in my apartment. I just remember getting a text message from my landlord the next morning, and he had a big no glass rule near the pool, and it was just an empty tequila ocho bottle floating in the pool.
Oh my God.
And I was like, sorry, I'm out of here. And I got on a plane, and I flew to San Francisco, and I was lucky enough. Miraculously, I had no idea how expensive it was. I had no idea what I was doing in the first place, but I was able to find an apartment. I started at Rick House. I was super scared because it was just this place that especially at that time was getting a lot of recognition. There were a lot of great people that worked there. It was super high volume and
high quality too, right?
Yeah. It was, I think, one of the first places that was really doing those huge numbers and packing them in. And you walk in and I call it businessmen gone wild because it's in the financial district.
Oh, and God. Do you like the... No, it's not all right. It's not a matter of liking those guys, but that is a kind of guy, isn't it?
It's a kind of guy and girl.
Fair.
And I don't know. I actually kind of prefer it almost because I don't know. It's like very straightforward needs, and I have a product to provide. Yeah. And I feel like when I work at other places, I have a lot more like challenging guests that come in. I love foodies and cocktail nerds because they're the people that are like really supporting businesses. But it's, you get those people that just want to like play stump the bartender and
an ego game.
Yeah.
Game of wits.
And when, at 501 at Rick House, you'd have like 50 people just bust through the doors and order like old fashions and whiskey. I really got to expand my whiskey knowledge there. And it was just on from minute one. And
so it's good to be transactional. Like, I want this, blah, no questions. It's like...
Yeah. And they did have questions, especially with such a huge selection as that and the way it was presented, these giant sweeping walls that reached to the tops of the ceilings with all these bottles. And so it was a good practice in being able to transfer information to a guest in like 5 seconds or less. So whenever we hired at Rick House and I was a manager there, I would tell people that, like, I need you to be able to tell me about a whiskey and convey, like, friendliness and hospitality in 5 seconds or less.
Informative and...
Like, if I can't tell you're, like, a wonderful, fun person by your smile, if you can't make a guest feel that way, then this isn't the bar for you. This isn't necessarily the bar where you get to make best friends with a guest or win them over because it's just turn and burn.
That's right.
And it was really fun. It's rowdy. And I got to wear suspenders, which...
Really? Is there an outfit? Did you guys have the outfit, quote unquote?
We did have the outfit.
Did you ever have a mustache?
Still kind of... they still kind of have I think, rock the outfits quite a bit. Yeah. But it was cool. At the time, I had just left Houston. I had only worked at Dive. I worked at my friend's Dive bar. I worked at Beaver's, which was not... It was a fancy restaurant, barbecue restaurant. It wasn't bow ties and suspenders. And so when I started Rick House, I was like, this is what I've heard cocktail bars are like. This is
totally
the cocktail bar in my head, like where you wear suspenders and you make drinks really fast and there's beautiful garnishes. And
this is what, so it's funny. I had a conversation the other day, and this is a slight tangent, but really related to that. So people romanticize Paris, right? They really do. So it's like, I've watched all these Audrey Hepburn movies. I like Jules A. Jim and all the guys, like all the French New Wave. And then you go and you finally get to see it and you get to smell it. And either that's an amazing thing because you've been idolizing it in a sense or romanticizing, or it's a horrible thing. And I heard, and this is kind of to contrast what is the perfect example, maybe the prototypical example of a great cocktail bar in Rick House. But I hear that if it's not meeting your expectations, like it has a terrible psychological effect on you.
It does. And in my lecture, my seminar, I talk a lot about how press and recognition, it just means higher expectations from people. And so if you can't deliver on all of that, it's really disappointing and
hurts your own feelings. I mean, we all got feelings.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't talk about that. We're like, oh, it's money in, money out. It's transactional. No, we're like, you talk about the smile bit. There's the natural inherent warmth that we all kind of have. And I think that's a wonderful thread in the industry, that people that have these they're fucking cool. They really got good personalities. So how long were you at Rick House then?
I was there for over a year. And then the company owned Bourbon and Branch.
Okay.
And then they were opening a few other bars. And then I went over to a bar called Tradition that we had just opened. Yeah. And I was the GM there.
Were you ready that time? Did you feel like you were ready?
I did feel like I was more ready.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever be complete. I feel like I've learned a lot and I have a good bank of information and systems. But every single bar, restaurant that I step into, I feel like I learned something from, and it just keeps adding to that.
Absolutely.
But I did feel a little bit more prepared. San Francisco is a whole new beast from Texas. So at that point, I'd already been through the ringer at Rick House, and Tradition was great. I was there for a fair amount of time, but I had an opportunity to go travel through Asia.
Yeah. What brought you to, or which parts of Asia?
My parents were going to the Philippines, and I had never met any of my family
Your mom's
on my
parents
mother's
still
side.
live over there, I guess?
They do. Yeah. Entire family. And so I put in something ridiculous, like a 2 months notice, because I don't think I'd really ever quit anywhere. And
you had a gentleman's agreement.
Yes. And I played that out. I went to Tails that year, and then I got on a plane and went straight to the Philippines. It was like last night of Tails, straight onto a 6 a.m. flight. And I spent the next month drying out in the Philippines in the middle of July.
Oh, it's the worst.
Yeah, in Southeast Asia, and walked off the plane, met 30 relatives.
That's amazing.
And yeah, it was beautiful. It was a pretty special time.
How long did you stay in the Philippines?
About a month.
Wow.
We were on this small island, and I just really hung out with my family, and it was nice because so much of my time, the few years before that, had been spent going to restaurants and going to check out this bar program and do this, and there's none of that there, and so it was a complete break from all of that, and there wasn't really internet, and 2 days of the week there was no electricity because they have rolling brownouts there, and it was very different.
But good though, enriching, I imagine, in its own way.
Definitely, yeah. And then my brother and I went to Bangkok, which was really funny because we had 10 hours to kill in Manila, and I heard of one cocktail bar there.
There is one, okay.
Yeah, well, I think there's a few now, a handful, and but it was called the Blind Pig, and I was trying to call to see if they were open, and it was reservation only, and nobody was picking up. I was like, this is so obnoxious, and even though I just left a company that's known for the reservation only, but I'll make it back there one day.
So you didn't ever get to go?
No, we never left the airport. Phone. No. I did meet a really cool guy at the airport that I have a remnant of my youth. I have a band tattoo, and we ended up talking about music.
Which band tattoo is it?
It's my little black flag.
Oh, it is a black flag. Oh. How do you feel about them trying to relive the days and getting back?
I have no feelings towards any of that. All of those types of things. Yeah. The only tours I care about now are Beyonce. Strangely.
Really? Oh man.
But I'm trying to get.
You got old, man.
I know. Tell me about it. I'm trying to get back into music. But we went to Bangkok, My boyfriend Chad met me in Vietnam. We
Where did
spent
you
some
guys
time
meet?
there.
In San Francisco?
We actually met at Camp Run Amok
No
the
kidding.
first year. Yeah.
I heard that it's a place to meet.
It is always to
get
establish
drunk
true friendships and
loverships.
he was in Boston at the time.
Mm-hmm.
He was running some bars with our friend Joy, Citizen and the Franklin and all these cool spots. And I was in San Francisco, obviously, and we met at Camp Run Amok the very first year. That's the only year I went. Mm. And we're friends.
Sure.
There was no sneaking away into the woods.
No running amok.
No running amok. And then he ended up moving to San Francisco to help open Trick Dog.
Oh, really?
And
did you have anything to do with that, or that was just happenstance before you guys started?
No, I would say that I known Josh and Scott before I moved to San Francisco. Yeah. We had been, when I was still in Texas, I went to Mexico with David Suro, who is the most magical human being in the world.
Lovely, yeah.
And Josh and Scott were on our trip with Tomas, who's wonderful as well. And I met Josh and a couple other people at a Domaine de Canton competition in St. Martin. And we have matching buddy tattoos.
I like it because it's so strategically placed on your middle finger as to show me.
My bar spoon on my middle finger. That was like the year of buddy tattoos. I have a lot of those. And so I knew those guys. I knew that they were opening Trick Dog. And then they brought in, I wouldn't say brought in, but a lot of people were very enchanted with the idea of Trick Dog, rightfully so. And so like Chad moved across the country to help to be a part of this new bar. And our friend Matthias moved from Milwaukee. Our friend Peter moved from Houston.
So it's like,
and
it just rallied people from
I mean, and then a few people from San Francisco, the city.
Yeah.
And, but Matthias and Peter more or less were living in my living room at the time.
In San Francisco?
And
I guess because they were new in town, didn't have a place to crash.
Exactly. Super expensive. And then the day Chad pulled up, he asked me to stay at my apartment. And I was like, cool, well, I have a couch, but that's taken. And there's a blow up mattress, but that's taken. It's like, you can sleep in my bed, but don't touch me.
Oh, man. That's how all romances start, right?
No. We started dating like a couple months later.
No, I'm sure the purest of intents.
Oh, yeah.
But so he meets up, rendezvous with you guys in Bangkok, you said? Or were you out of Bangkok?
He met up with me. My brother went home at that time. He met up with me in Vietnam.
Oh, okay.
And that was like our first trip together.
That's amazing.
And
Great place to go, too.
Yeah, amazing. I went to Singapore for a couple days after that and did a guest bartending shift at 28 Hong Kong
Street. What do you think of that bar? It's
really cool.
Amazing, right?
Singapore is a very, very cool city.
Would you ever imagine that, like, such a small place and where there's just these nestled bars that nobody knows about, that it would be that great? Like, it's amazing.
Well, my first manager at Rick House, he had actually moved there and he was the GM at the time.
Really?
And so I was connected to them because of that. And they've done so much in Singapore and in Asia in general.
Yeah.
I'm super jealous of all the things that they accomplished.
Don't ever be jealous of the weather, though.
I don't. I have really curly hair, so that's not
that
not
frizz
for
factor,
me.
is that what I hear? Yeah.
And then when I got back to the States, I flew back into Texas, and I ended up, because I didn't have a job and I don't know, I just had this big traveling bug. I borrowed my brother's car and I did a 2-month road trip around the country.
It's just probably the longest sabbatical I've ever
heard
of.
People are like, are you secretly rich? I'm like, no, I just eat a lot of shitty drive-through food.
See, that's where nostalgia comes back. The fast food dinner
exactly.
childhood, right?
It built me to...
built you to last.
Yeah, and so I drove for forever. It felt like it was one of the hardest things I did. So I was trying the stage or guest bartend or whatever in cities all over the country that I could pass through, and still kind of trying to feed that I don't know, idea of like mentoring or like absorbing of everybody's
Which is the opposite,
info.
right? Because you want to give people info, but also take it in.
Yeah, exactly. And, when I moved to San Francisco, I moved there because I was like, I want to learn. And then I immediately became like bar manager at Rick House.
Yeah.
I was like, oh,
like
here I am
unidirectional
again. And so I was just like hungry to have it, to see things still and to
That's what
learn
happens
from
when
other
you're
people.
stuck in Texas for 17 years.
I know, it is.
Pins you up.
Exactly.
You eventually made your way back to San Fran, though?
I did. 2 months driving around the country, being behind lots of bars, getting drunk in lots of cities. A lot of people took very good care of me.
Right.
And then I made my way back to Texas and then to Portland Cocktail Week and then back down to San Francisco.
Which year are we talking about Portland Cocktail Week?
This was 2013, I think.
Yeah, I saw you there. I remember we touched on Houston, which you go and you're randomly in Portland, not you necessarily, but so a person's randomly in Portland, like, oh, you know about the Heights, you know about River Oaks.
I have lots of Houston love.
That's so crazy.
I think that Chad always jokes the one thing that people from Texas love the most is talking about Texas, and
we hate it when we're here, but when we're gone, it's perfect.
I have a lot of Houston love, and I'm so impressed with how the city's kind of grown, and people. I think all those amazing things were more or less there, or the foundations were there, and now there's this huge booming influx of people moving there, and everybody's bummed out,
that so much.
Yeah, gentrification. Right. I'm like, okay, you can't have hide a good thing for too
every
long
good thing
before
gets
people
discovered.
Start recognizing it.
Yeah, every great brand they have to sell out, quote unquote. They've got to reach a bigger audience, but that's for the betterment of the world, really, But the thing that this is very interesting, and I wonder if the same thing's happening in Houston, which I'm sure it is. So Austin, okay, I've been in Austin 16 years now, quite a while, longest I've ever lived anywhere. So I guess when I hit 17, I'll be ready to go drive for 2 months or go around the country. We'll see. We'll see what my wife thinks about that. She's like, you got to drive, all this. But we are like, fuck you, Dallas. Do not move. Do not Dallas or Austin, right? Mm-hmm. And so I don't feel that way, right? I love, people are great, most of them, and they better the community. There's more art. There's more just diversity, which is great. Mm-hmm. But do you notice that the people that are the most vocal about this upheaval with people moving in have been in the cities less than 2 years?
Yeah, totally.
Isn't that crazy? How do they get to do that?
I have. There's all these new apartment complexes and all these people that moved into Houston, especially, and they're all complaining about more apartment complexes being built. And
the one, because you moved into the first wave, the second wave is also different. It's very weird. Why do you think what do you think it is about people and culture that is so resistant to newcomers?
I think that it's with everything. People want to be in the know and they want to be the only person in the know. And so it's like with a band. And, they were good before everybody else heard them. I'm like, did they stop being good, or are you just
Did you just start being
snob?
A dick? Yeah, exactly. It totally is like that.
Everybody likes that.
But
I'm still guilty of that from time to time.
Are you? I have
bit.
the opposite reaction to it, actually. And that is that, so basically the Arcade Fire, when they came out, they sold out emos. They did a really, really big, and I was like, I'm not going to listen. My arms are crossed right now. I'm not listening to the Arcade Fire because everybody's listening to the Arcade Fire. Give it 3 years now. It's like, oh man, Suburbs is one of the greatest records ever. So it kind of happens like that. So what, I would imagine is this most present chapter, most recent chapter. So you go from hospitality to bar backing to bartending to bar management, but now it sounds like you're going for the equity game, or you're going to be opening up some new places, or already have.
It's trying to find a good fit, and I don't know how or when it happened, but started consulting.
Yeah. Which was the crux of the presentation today at Institute, right?
Yes, that's what I presented on today, and Chad was doing some consulting with the Bon Vivants, and I was doing some by myself, and we decided to ultimately just do it together, and that we would end up talking about all those ideas, and we made each other better.
That's incredible. Do you like working with the person that you love?
I do. I think it's hard.
Yeah.
Somehow we do it really well. I think better than probably other people, strangely.
Yeah. Did you not expect that? Like,
I
that
thought
you could do
it's
it?
hard.
Yeah.
I think I thought it would be harder. But it's not even so much that it's hard because we're like dating, but we're lovers. But that we're just very opinionated.
Well, yeah, that's what happens when you're smart.
Yeah,
right?
I guess we're very we have very strong feelings towards things. So when we first started, we realized that we needed to streamline our classics.
Yeah.
In my seminar today, I was like, I bet every single one of you, the 30 of you, have a different old-fashioned recipe.
I bet.
And that's the simplest cocktail to make. So we went through all like 100 cocktails, and then we're just like arguing over daiquiri specs, and it was pretty ridiculous.
You know how nerdy of an argument that is?
It was the worst. And
see, but I think that's why it works, right? Like, no, but it's this kind of sugar from this particular type of region.
Yeah.
But it's okay to be like smug and kind of stuck up with each other because it's loving,
Well, and we came from such different schools too, like the East Coast. Like Texas is its own thing because it just arose out of, people like Bobby and people like Ryan who were doing their own research and kind of establishing their own culture there,
right.
and
putting a flag down in the middle of nowhere, basically.
Exactly. And East Coast and West Coast styles are so completely different. I feel like East Coast is more about classic cocktails, and especially like Boston, a place like that is, I always describe it as a city where like most places try to upstage each other with like the best cocktail list. And I feel like Boston's one of those places where they try to upstage each other with hospitality.
Ooh, that's not
They're
so
like,
bad.
oh man, I did this amazing thing for this guest. And I
let him borrow my car. He was drunk, but he had to go. That's a lovely thought. I never even imagined.
It's a really cool town. There's some really wonderful people that
Boston's
are there.
Great, yeah.
I learned a lot from that city. And when I was on my road trip, I got to stage at Drink, and John Gertson was there, and my friend Will Thompson. And I learned the 2 days I was there, and Ezra, the now GM there, I learned so much from just being behind that bar and bar backing.
Yeah. You are a student of life. I can just see it, right? Like, it's never gonna end, is it?
I hope not.
Yeah.
I hope that's why I eat out all the time. I mean, other than I need to eat and I'm forever hungry, but I just like seeing what other people are doing and trying to see what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're consulting a lot, and we're hopefully going to be partnering in on a new space that we're working with.
This the Japan concept you were talking about?
A little, yeah.
Or taking notes from that.
Taking
maybe?
notes. We are currently working with April Bloomfield's restaurant group, and so we have started with a restaurant they opened or kind of reinvigorated in San Francisco called Tosca. It's a business that's a bar, 100-year-old bar.
Wow.
In a few years. In 2019, the business will be 100 years old.
Wow, it's crazy.
And institution in San Francisco, and the business was about to go under, and April and Ken came in and bought into it and turned it around. And I always admired the job they did. It's still like when you walked in the building, it still retained its character, and they did a really, really nice job with that. And so that's the first program we've worked on with them, and we're trying to get another bar open with them that we'll be partnering in on. And consulting's really hard. I feel like my seminar is like 50. The first 5 minutes is introducing the seminar, and the rest of 55 minutes
is it setting expectations? So you give me some tips, because I got to present tomorrow.
Well, I say it's like 55 minutes of just licking my wounds in front of people, but I wanted to call my seminar Lemonade.
It's like it's psychoanalysis in a way. It's like, all right, guys, pull up the couch.
Yeah.
We're gonna sit here and talk about.
It's a lot of lessons learned.
Yeah.
It's, there's no playbook for anything. That's the thing with like being a bar manager a few years ago. There wasn't really a playbook for that necessarily. Not until like things like the Bar Institute and
Well, to offer some sense of curriculum for people, that's kind of incredible.
Yeah,
thing
this would have been amazing a few years when I first started bartending.
You got to do it yourself now. You can impart your knowledge and your wisdom.
Yeah, it's a lot of lessons learned. But my seminar was mostly on like concepts and ideas, and I think starting out with that, consulting doesn't necessarily have to be the next step in everybody's career. Yeah. It's just like being an ambassador, you know. It's absolutely not right for everybody, and it sounds really fancy, but it's definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done.
I bet.
And you win some, you lose some, but we somehow keep doing it. Even this job we've taken with April and Ken, I feel like is more or less a big consulting job.
Well, so, you know, it's interesting. So I love talking to people, and I like that. So, for example, I was coming in, I'm going to do a few interviews here this week, and it's great being part of the Bar Institute and stuff. And I was like, if I think about it too much, that I have to do 2 interviews today, 1 in the morning, and then go do a presentation, I'm going to get really fucking nervous and stressed out. So it seems like you're always just in the moment. You're not thinking so far ahead that you get inundated with what the future holds. Or is that not true? Is that not true?
I think my go-to reaction is to do that, actually. Yeah. And then it's just part of this whole process has been realizing that you kind of just have to sit back and let things happen, because restaurants, anything, right? Bars are so unpredictable. People are so unpredictable. Yeah. You never know how things are going to end up working out. And so I'm super OCD, and I'm a total control freak. And
so I had pegged totally inverse, the exact opposite.
I guess, I don't know. I swing really hard both ways. Yeah. Like when it's funny, like my friend Brad Moore, he calls me Rager Sprouse.
Rager?
Yeah, and people are like, what? You
seem like pretty subdued and pretty meek and stuff right now.
It's like, yeah, but sometimes I do. I like getting up really early, and then sometimes I just, I end up on a plane going to Key West or something like that out of nowhere.
Are you the embodiment of Ernest Hemingway, like as a modern Ernest Hemingway? You just kind of go.
Yeah, wherever. I don't know. I just find I get caught up in moments sometimes.
It's amazing.
Maybe it's because I am like, when I'm on the other end of that swing, I try to be so concise and organized, and it's that's the luxury of this business. You want to play hard and work hard, and
it's a balance, though.
Yeah, it is a balance. No, you can't.
You won't have a career.
Yeah, I feel like I spend a lot of my time emailing. I'm responsible for a lot of money, people's money, brand money.
How do you feel about that? That's kind of a big weight, isn't it?
It is, but it's a challenge, and I find that invigorating.
Yeah.
It's a huge challenge, but I have to be on top of emails and things like that. One thing I'm fairly good at is returning emails.
Good. Well, that's a sign of. Do you notice that successful people, they're the ones that reply to email? But the people, they're always, and that's what makes them that way, I think, is being very
it's so frustrating. I've organized lots of events, and it's really hard when people don't get back to you. So I try to wake up every day at even if I had a long night, I wake up at usually 7 or 8 a.m.
Wow, okay.
Especially when we're in California, we're on Pacific time. We're already behind in the
2 hours
business world. And so I try to answer all my emails I got and then go back to sleep for a couple hours. So at least I appear more responsible than I am.
Very concise with bursts of time. I think that works.
And then Chad always makes fun of me because I always have my phone on me. But I just want to
be on top
get
of it,
things
right?
done fast and make it happen.
I think that's great. And so, one of the other themes of the show is that I always try to bring a bottle I think that you would enjoy. Or when people are at the house, they'll pick one off my shelf, But I picked a Vago Tepestate, which was where apparently you hung out with Judah and Acalino. And this is coming from his Palenque. What do you think about this mezcal? You don't have to go into detailed tasting notes, but how does it make you feel?
Well, it definitely is helping with my hangover this morning.
Therapeutic.
I feel agave. I think I like all categories of spirits. And I think I'm more knowledgeable about some than others. I would feel like agave is something I have the most passion towards.
Yeah, it's a brilliant thing.
When I was in Texas, with Bobby Hugel being there and being exposed to people like Tomas and David Suro and the Tequila Interchange Project, at a very early time in my bartending career, I felt very moved by the things that tip does, including, not just protecting the culture and traditional production methods of agave, but also taking into consideration the people that make it. And
well, there is that human toll to all of this.
Exactly. I mean, it's when you go to Palenques in Oaxaca and you see like the changes somebody like Ron Cooper has made on a family and an entire town, ultimately, it's pretty life-changing. And so that is one thing that, like, we'll never carry an agave, a spirit that I haven't personally seen made.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we've, at the same
Incidentally,
time...
I think you've seen this being made, so yeah.
And at the same time, I haven't opened a tequila bar, so it's a little easier for me to say that.
They're trying to get some of those bottles too, man. That's tough,
everything's getting more expensive too.
And according to Carlos Camarena too, he said it's probably within 2 years there will be a massive mezcal shortage. That's how soon. And that they're actually going, and I didn't mean to get on this tangent, but I think it's kind of important, especially like talking about mezcal, but that they're going to have to start going into Jalisco because to take some of that, the blue agave, or the what do they call it, the azul, to make mezcal out of it, because they're like, you guys took stuff from us, so that's how it went. And like we're gonna get so it's a big crisis coming up.
It is, and that's why I think like organizations like TIP are really important to kind of pay attention to what they're doing, and then also supporting brands that make a difference or are doing it the right way. It's a really great example of how bartending's not just bartending, and it's not just, hospitality, which is amazing. And it's not just a profession that you can make a life out of, but it's something that directly affects humans and the way people make money in their life ways. And so we have the power to turn people on to brands and to get people to drink better products that have a direct effect on those people in that industry. And it's something I feel like I will not compromise on that.
Yeah. Well, it's a very influential. We're in an interesting spot because we can influence people in a positive way. And I'm not sure how that helps the scarcity issue, unfortunately, but I think we'll see how it kind of shakes up.
Yeah.
So in like the remainder of the time that you're in Austin, when are you leaving? When are you coming back?
I was going to leave tomorrow and then go to Houston and see some of my family and have some drinks there. But then I might stay an extra day to float the river.
Ah, yes. It's amazing right now too.
I don't know. So much water, somebody invited me last night. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll find out. My flight's out of Houston. Yeah. Nice thing about the Houston-Austin thing is that they're so close together, and it wouldn't be the first time I took a Greyhound if I miss a ride.
That's amazing.
So, I'll make my way down there eventually to catch my flight and see my family. And then go back to San Francisco. I have a 7 a.m. flight out of Houston on Thursday, and I have a meeting at noon Thursday in San Francisco. So
you'll nail it. You'll do it.
I hope so.
Obviously, the mezcal will help if, in fact, you need.
Exactly. But it's great being in Austin. It's the last time I was here, I think, was during South by Southwest in 2015.
Oh, okay.
Chad and I worked at Half Step that entire week.
Oh, amazing.
And with Chris Bostic. and their whole crew, and my brother, of course.
Yeah, of course.
And that was great, but we didn't really get to see the sites as much. So, and a lot has opened. Josh Loving has opened a place, which I saw last night, which is like my new favorite bar.
Yeah, it's incredible.
The Townsend.
Townsend.
That was great. Drink a lot of whiskey there last night.
Oh, brilliant. Yamazaki. That was the break-even bottle, 18-year last night. Which is
great. And then trying to eat as much queso as possible.
You have to.
And breakfast tacos. We don't have breakfast tacos in San Francisco. It's absurd.
To me. Yeah, it is.
We don't have really queso.
That's also absurd. But Texans...
like true Tex-Mex.
Like I believe it to us queso. To like kind of take a concept that in essence is pretty natural and turn it into something that's incredibly unhealthy.
Yeah, but it's wonderful.
Wonderful.
When I'm in San Francisco, sometimes I'll bartend at a place called the Hideout, which is this tiny bar. I actually worked there for 2 years, and now I just occasionally cover shifts. I usually bring a crock pot with me.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, come see me and get some queso.
True to Texas.
Fills a room.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Bring a box of Velveeta with you wherever you go. People will come.
The Julio's chips specifically.
Which are
delicious. So Claire, it's been really a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time out in the Bar Institute when we have this melee around us of people learning and chatting and yelling. But it's great. Thanks for carving the time out. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you. Well, there we have it. What do you guys think of Claire? Miss Claire Sprouse, early days of Houston. It's great getting to talk about emos, Mary Janes, Rudyards. Get to talk about music. You know, I'm sorry that I keep finding ways to talk about music, but Claire now is in San Francisco working at ABV, also working some consulting gigs as well with the Tin Roof Drink Community, which was awarded a sustainability award from Tales of the Cocktail. Can't wait to see what's next. I think Claire alludes to a few spaces there in San Francisco that may bear her name and her concept in the near future. So thanks everybody for listening to Show to V. No matter how appalled and excited and invigorated by sports you are that the Cubs won the World Series last night, or if you're trying to make time to watch the new Ash vs. Evil Dead season, please keep dancing.